Well, good morning. Andy Lockwood here from Lockwood College Prep, and welcome to College Coffee Talk. Pearl Lockwood, partner, wife, co-founder, and co-host. She is unavailable today. She is on special assignment, doctor's appointment with one of our kids. So I'm flying solo. So welcome. I am going to cover a question that we get frequently. It's rarely for a week or two to go by without getting a question from families who think that they can't possibly qualify for financial aid. So they're wondering, should I even bother filing the FAFSA or the CSS Profile? What's the use? People like us never qualify. We have jobs. We live in an area like Long Island, high income, but we've lived below our means. We've saved money. I just had a text last night, actually this morning, from a friend of mine from law school who was like, yeah, I would have been better off buying a house in the Hamptons instead of saving money in my 529 for my kids. And my response was, I couldn't live without a summer in the Hamptons myself. So I'm gonna talk about that right now. So there are pros and cons to applying for financial aid. So I'm just going to walk through a few of them stream of consciousness style. But if you have any specific questions yourself, whether you are watching this on College Coffee Talk, which we do every Monday at 10 a.m. on Facebook, or you're seeing this on YouTube or listening to it on our podcast, feel free to reach out with clarifying questions, or if I didn't amplify something enough for you. So first of all, one reason to file is because you don't know necessarily that you are not going to qualify. Because it's kind of complicated. There's no bright line income test as to whether or not you will qualify for aid. I can give you a rule of thumb, but that's all it is. It's a rule of thumb because there are 70-something factors that go into the determination about your eligibility for aid. So income is probably the most important factor. My general rule of thumb, if you have just one child in college and you're applying to a private college with a high sticker price, ironically, maybe, the high sticker price colleges tend to give more money. But the closer you get to approximately $200,000 in adjustable gross income, the harder it is to qualify for need-based aid. If you're applying to a public university, either in the state where you live, whether it's New York or somewhere else, or out of state, that number is generally a lot lower. It might be 25% of that, around $50,000 or $60,000. Mostly because state universities don't really have their own money to give out anymore the way that private schools with larger endowments have. So most of the money from state universities come from the federal government. We'll see what happens there in terms of some of the political stuff that seems to be affecting at least some schools, mostly the elite schools right now in terms of their federal aid availability. But the jury's still out on that. Money that comes from state universities that we generally see for the families that are in the wheelhouse of our practice at Lockwood College Prep, usually merit aid. And that's the thing, if you don't qualify for need-based aid, again, based on income, based on savings, not necessarily the gross amount of savings, but where, not how much, but where you saved. If you don't qualify for need-based aid, it's not game over at all. Because frankly, there's more merit aid out there than need-based aid. And merit aid is defined as money that's not need-based. It's usually grades and scores relative to the cohort that you're competing with when you apply to college. So if you're in the top 20% or so compared to the other kids who are applying, then you are applying to a school that's generous. Those two conditions must be met. Then you have a good shot at getting money, as opposed to if you are not in the top 20%, if you had to beg, borrow, and steal and scratch and claw your way to get in, you're not as desirable a candidate. Also, if you are desirable, but you're applying to a bunch of schools that don't give money, like big public universities, for example, then it doesn't matter how you stack up because you can't get blood from a stone. So anyway, one reason to apply for aid is you may not know that you don't qualify. Okay, so give it a shot. Another reason, another factor I think that goes into the mix here is that some colleges, in order to give merit aid, require you to file the need-based applications, which is primarily the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. And in many cases, it's another form. In addition to that, CSS Profile, which is used mostly, not entirely, by private universities. So this past year, we had a client who got into a pretty expensive local New York City private university. And when the merit aid awards came out for his friends, he didn't receive one. And so he asked me, like, what happened? Why do you think I didn't get any merit aid? Because he certainly had the GPA and the SAT scores to put him in the running for merit. So my response was, well, remember when we tried to get your dad to give us his tax returns so that we, Pearl, could fill out his FAFSA and his CSS profile, have him approve it, and then we would submit it. His response was, my tax return is the size of a phone book. There's no way I'm going to qualify for any aid. This is really a pain in the butt. Do I really have to do this? And we said, look, it does help you get merit at some of the schools you're applying to. The backstory is a very nice guy, great family, great kid. The dad is a managing partner of a law firm that's several hundred attorneys, right? So definitely no way he would qualify for aid, not just because of his income, but also because of his assets. He has all sorts of partnerships and things like that. So then we rushed in his FAFSA and his CSS profile, even though it was after the priority deadline, and the college came back with an offer of $21,000 a year in merit, just because we filed the financial aid applications. I think the reason for that is that colleges, before they give merit aid, need to make sure, for a variety of reasons, that they're giving money out of the right pool, whether it's need-based or merit aid. But that's a reason that you should consider filing the FAFSA and the CSS profile, even if you think you don't qualify, because some colleges, it's not the majority, but some colleges require you to do that to be in the running for non-need-based aid, as weird or counterintuitive as that might sound. Another reason to consider filing is to demonstrate financial strength. So if you know you're not going to qualify, which again, I'm just going to gloss over that because that's not always the case, but let's say you make $1 million a year. We have a fair amount of clients who are in the seven-figure category. Most of the time, we recommend let's file either because of that merit issue that I just talked about, or because you'll show financial strength. And this is not particularly politically correct, but colleges need families that are financially strong. And I think this coming year, that's going to be more important than ever because the borrowing limits have been slashed by the big, beautiful bill by the federal government. Whereas before, without judging, parents could borrow the whole thing for a college. The school I mentioned before, probably about $98,000 a year. If so inclined, in the past, it would be relatively easy to borrow the entire amount as a parent for the plus loan. The rules change. You're capped at a total of $65,000 total for 4 years, not $98,000 a year. So because it's going to be a lot harder, I think, for people to come up with the money, I think that's going to tilt the odds more at the expensive schools, more in favor of affluent families who can write the check or can get their hands on the money to pay for college. So demonstrating that financial strength by submitting your financial aid and your merit and your CSS profile, if that's the case, your FAFSA, which is always going to be the case, or any other forms that the college requires, that is, I think, going to be a way to slightly boost chances of getting in. And also, if you're applying to a college that requires that issues merit aid, you're more likely to get merit if you show the financial strength. The reason for that is sort of twofold. One, it's the business model of these colleges. They can't afford to give a free ride to everyone, so they need affluent families. Number two, they have algorithms and enrollment consultants and all sorts of data to help them figure out, okay, well, if we give, I remember reading a book that kind of sketched this out. This is not verbatim here, But Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, with a hypothetical client in Weston, Connecticut, which is a pretty affluent town. Okay, so if we give this child $17,000, that's not going to be enough to keep him from attending UConn, the local state university. But if we go up to $23,000, our model shows that we have a good shot at landing him, because it's enough of a price differential and it's bragging rights at the next barbecue, where mom or dad can talk about how Chip got a full ride, to Trinity, even though that's another $90-something thousand a year school, and $23,000 is not really a full ride. But let's just gloss over that, because I'm sure you wouldn't exaggerate. Anyone watching or listening to this would never do that. So it's not only a financial decision, but it's also a bragging rights type of psychology here, which is pretty manipulative, but it does go on, and they have these models that seem to bear out this type of strategy for giving merit aid to high-income families. This may not sit well with you, may not sit well with me. The point is, who cares? This is the way it is in real life. Okay. What about, does it hurt you to file your financial aid applications? Can it hurt your kids' chances of getting in to the college that they are hoping to, because will that count against them somehow? So the short answer is, well, I can't give a totally short answer, but the answer that I will give you is, most colleges are at least need aware, meaning that they will factor in whether you need money as one of the considerations about whether to admit you. Again, not politically correct, right? But that's reality. There's a handful of colleges, I'd say the top maybe 20, 25 schools that claim to be need blind, and that's some of the oldest, most prestigious schools like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Duke, etc. And for the most part, I believe them. However, I'm superstitious and kind of goofy about it. So I'm not bragging here, but if my kid were applying to an Ivy League school, and we have 4 kids, and 2 of them actually did apply to Ivies, and both of them got in actually. I'd be really hesitant to apply for aid, because the way I think, and this is just me, and Pearl and I are sort of on the same page. If we were facing a situation, I think I would get a second or a third job to send my kid to the school that I felt like she deserved to get into. I know that's pretty dumb, because I don't think there's a difference between our kids' ability to be successful in school based on whether they go to like a local state university, like around here that could be SUNY Binghamton, versus some other school. I think it's less about where you go. It's barely about where you go, because where you go is not who you'll be. It's really more about your efforts, and that's what gets overlooked in all the rankings and all the chit chat about which school is better, why is one school ranked higher than the other, and all that. That's all kind of stupid. But I know all this, and I still feel the same way about whether or not we should apply hypothetically for aid if our child's gunning for an Ivy League school. So I recognize the hypocrisy. I don't know if that makes it better or worse that I'm actually talking about it. But if you are sort of superstitious, or you don't want to have that be one factor, then maybe what you do is, on the common application, not the financial aid applications, on the common application, you might say, no, I don't want to apply for aid. But you still submit your financial aid applications to demonstrate that financial strength. If you are going to qualify for need-based aid, and you want to give your kid the best shot at getting into even a need-blind school, quote-unquote need-blind school, superstitiously, I would say don't do it. But if you really need the money, and you're not willing to get that second or third job bagging groceries, or whatever it is, to figure out a way to send your kid there, then you probably should apply, right? Because what's the point of letting your kid apply there if you're not committed to figuring out a way to send them there? There's other reasons to kind of think about whether or not you should apply for aid. There's the government privacy or privacy considerations about giving your information to the government or the College Board or all that. My feeling about that is I already feel like there is no privacy anyway. I file a tax return, I have a driver's license. So what's one more thing? What's about sharing financial aid information? But you may have your own opinion on that. But that's certainly a consideration that we hear occasionally, not all the time, not like the other ones that I talked about. I think I covered all of the financial aid thoughts that I had here. So let me just see quickly if there are any comments here. I see a handful of people on with us live here. And like I said, if you don't have anything that you, if you're not watching this live or listening to this live, and you do have questions, feel free to pop them in to either it's YouTube or wherever else you're watching this, or if you're listening to our top 5 college planning podcast, the College Admissions Edge, depending on which random Google search you do, we're either number 2 or number 5. Really crowded field, so crowded. Then you can just, I guess, email us. Our email address is vip@lockwoodcollegeprep.com. We've got a whole lot of other information at lockwoodcollegeprep.com. If you are local to the Long Island, New York area, we have been running weekly live workshops in our office. You can see the schedule on our website, lockwoodcollegeprep.com. And if you're available, come on by. We have room. They do sell out, even though they are free yet non-refundable. But we're running them almost every week. So you are welcome to do that. Thank you very much for watching and for listening. Have a great week. And Pearl and I will be back next week, live 10 a.m., facebook.com/Lockwood College Prep. Have a great week.